Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today, I'm going to help you to analyse a key quote from A Christmas Carol, fellow passengers to the grave. Before we get going, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are plenty of things on the channel to help you understand A Christmas Carol like an expert. Let's analyse the quote by Fred, fellow passengers to the grave. Here is Fred, and this is what he has to say when he's speaking in Stave One about others. He says that we are fellow passengers to the grave. So the first thing we need to know is the context of the quote, where it appears in the text. In Stave One, Fred speaks to his Uncle Scrooge about others in society when he argues in favour of Christmas. Now we need to think about analytical things that we can say about this quote. Here's one example. Fred sees others as equals and doesn't judge them based on their class or wealth. Because of his attitude, he is happy, unlike Scrooge. Another thing we can say about this quote is this. This metaphor introduces the theme of the afterlife. Dickens wants his readers to consider their own afterlives and fear consequence. Something else we can say about this quote is this. Fred cares about those less fortunate to himself. As a middle-class character with a social conscience, Dickens uses Fred as a model example to his readers here. He is meant to mirror the attitudes and values that he wants his readers to adopt. One other thing we can do to show some sophistication is we can make a link to another place in the text using this quote. And here's an example of that. We've got Scrooge here, also in Act 1. He says to the charity collectors that the poor should get on with dying in order to decrease the surplus population. There's the quote there, that phrase. And this is how we can make the link. Dickens places Scrooge in opposition to Fred in Stave One. They're very oppositional characters. They provide a contrast. Fred cares about the lives of others, whereas Scrooge is misanthropic. He feels the poor are responsible for their own misery, which is also why he says, are there no prisons? And he thinks they're a burden on others. So there's a very big difference in the attitude of Scrooge and Fred. So there we are. There's a great quote for us to know. Fellow passengers to the grave. Lots of things that we can attach to this metaphor. But it's also a really great quote because it can be used in a number of different contexts. So if we're given an essay to write about Fred, obviously that fits. It's said by Fred. If we're asked to write about family, Fred is the nephew of Scrooge, so this works. If we're asked about change, well, actually, Fred embodies the change that Dickens wants his readers to adopt and is also, in his attitudes and values, providing an example of the change that Scrooge needs to seek in order to find redemption. Charity, Fred is charitable. He's also somebody who celebrates Christmas and speaks in favour of that. So if you're asked about Christmas, Fred is somebody that you can turn to. He's a contrast to Scrooge. So if we're asked to write about Scrooge, we can talk about the fact that Scrooge needs to adopt the attitudes of Fred. And if we get asked to write about poverty, the fact that Fred sees others as equals and doesn't judge others based on their wealth is something that we can explore. So here's an example of a PEA paragraph that we could write about Fred. There's my point. Fred values Christmas and family more than money and provides a contrast to Scrooge. It's a great point to make because if we actually look below the surface, we are writing here about Fred, Christmas, family, money and Scrooge. So this one point and therefore paragraph that I'm about to show you would fit with all of those different themes for essays. So there's our point. Here's our quote. Fred sees us as fellow passengers to the grave, and here's a bit of analysis of that. This metaphor shows us that Fred sees all of us on a path through life, and that unites us, and he doesn't judge people based on their class or wealth, in contrast to Scrooge. Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask something you'd like to see me cover in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.